You are mentioning the children, and I'd like to touch on that briefly. Let's talk about the children. Of course, we want to reinforce for them the concepts of respect for authority and the like. Meanwhile, they do see our fear and our apprehension in regards to not being as vocal as we could be with what they are also witnessing. And on the other hand, we want to make it clear that these trends are stemming from abuse of power, and we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to impart these lessons on them as well. Are the young people aware that they are being targeted, and how do they respond to the mixed messages of the adults not being as courageous as we could be and their rights being violated by school authorities?
That's a very good question because there's some children, I think it sometimes depends on the types of parents that you actually have. Because some children 100% are aware and manage to steer clear of the problem. But even though they are aware, they still sometimes find themselves in the problem because it's not them. They are still the children. And the adults in that environment are the ones perpetuating the systemic, I wouldn't even call it violence, but it is almost like abuse on these children. Then you have the other children whose parents just don't have a clue. They literally, sometimes these parents can come in from other countries and they live in the UK, and in particularly the Caribbean or Africa, everyone looks like you. The one thing you're not going to face is racism and discrimination. So a lot of them come in quite blind to understanding that this person is actually treating your child a different way. They don't get it. So the thing is with children, they feel it but don't know how to explain it or don't know what to do about it. And that's parents or one of our conferences or one of our online workshops come in. But children are taking it to another level. Like I said, it's, instead of picking up the violence, it would be great if they could take it and do something more positive with it. But there is a lot of violence, and it's not a good thing. We're losing too many of our young people to the violence. And a lot of it stems from the anger of how they were treated in school. And a lot of it is like they're looking at their parents failing them because, you know, your parent is supposed to be there to protect you. And then parents are having an issue because they don't know how to protect their children. So they just go with what a teacher has said.
Community. This is Dr. Venita Kelly and co-host Felicia Chapelle of Talk to Me. Our guest is Miss Cheryl Phoenix, founder of the Black Child Agenda, established in 2013 in the United Kingdom, and who is standing firm where they are fighting against internalized racism in the public school system and the school-to-prison pipeline. So far, we've been discussing among the many, many things we've covered, that the children are feeling underprotected and that they're witnessing extreme disciplinary measures that are leaving them, in some cases, out of school for long periods of time or permanently turned onto the streets. They are becoming suicidal, being groomed into the drug trade. Children who were bright-eyed are angry and resistant. Parents are struggling with how to navigate the systemized push-out and criminalization of their children. Ms. Phoenix and the Black Child Agenda are constantly booked and traveling there in the UK, as well as have gone online to deliver seminars and webinars that teach parents what the laws are so that they can, in fact, protect their children, especially when, as immigrants from what have been all black countries, they have no experience or cognition of systematic racism. Therefore, people who are black, Caribbean, from African countries, and mixed race are even experiencing the bullying of white teachers towards their black and brown-skinned children, and they don't quite understand it as that. It's all detrimental to the psychological well-being of parents and children and the children's proper development. It's happening in the UK, and we see it here in our school systems in the United States
As
Mm-hmm.
well. So let's try to return to this conversation. If you're just joining us, we are here talking with Cheryl Phoenix. One of the things your group does is to offer these training seminars that you mentioned, the online seminars to parents, to offer tools needed to gain the self-confidence to address different things that they're seeing in their school system environment so they can make informed decisions, becoming aware of what the children are dealing with and the difficulties that the young people are facing all day at school, sometimes every day. Give us some more insight into what you do to empower folks to push back, what you do to advocate for them, what their options are for their school-age children.
Absolutely. The options are quite vast. What we do in our conferences, as I touched on before, was that we only and solely deal with the law. That's it. It's just as simple as that. What I've done in the last 10 or so years is studied and mastered education law, children and family law, a touch on criminal law, but not so much because one of my co-directors is a criminal defense barrister, so she takes care of that. So master the law, master policy. And the interesting thing is with the policies, they're forever changing, but not that much. But the problem that we find is that schools aren't using the policy. So that's it. So once I empower parents on what policies they're looking for, what areas they're to look for, what questions to ask, particularly if the child needs an educational healthcare plan, that's for those that have SEMH, social and emotional mental health. If they need to do that, what the law is. And if sometimes needs be, I take it to the High Court, which is one of the highest courts that we have in the UK for discrimination. Because one thing I've noticed that they always try to tell us that we use and we play the race card. There's a race card here, there's a race card there, and we're the only ones that don't actually use that card. However, Cheryl Phoenix was born for a reason, because when it comes to actually telling it like it is within the courtroom, and sometimes telling off a couple of judges, that's what needs to be done, that's what gets done. Because if we're not allowed to say how we feel and what is being put on us, then who's going to? It's almost as though we always have to be oppressed. We mustn't say how we feel. We're not allowed to have emotions, neither are our children. No, not today, not for 2020 and then beyond. With regards to empowering our young people, within the workshops and seminars and conferences that we do, we have a lot of empowerment youth agencies that come in. They're independent again, who we have the likes of Manhood Academy West London, 100 Black Men of London, Origin of London, who mostly base all of what they do around business and finance and structure, self-discipline, children, teaching our young people about managing their finances, taking them on trips to universities, talking about their Black history and how proud they should be of their dark skin, etc. So these things are also running simultaneously, but it's just not enough. With the speed that children are dying in London, with the speed that they're being excluded in London, with the speed that parents are being broken down, with the speed that our young people are being groomed into county lines, a lot of what is going on is just not enough. We need more and more and more and more and more. And we need to also connect with our brothers and sisters in the USA and vice versa and start doing some exchanges so the experiences that we are facing can be shared, and also opening our children's eyes to there's more to the world than just the USA, than just the UK. And then that way we start building partnerships and families. Like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, if we don't build that village, who's going to do it?
In the thought pattern of the village it takes to groom and raise children, are you finding from non-marginalized groups that you do have support? We see you've had a lot of media exposure and a generally positive response to your work and approach from some non-marginalized people who are acknowledging your fight and the realities the Black Child Agenda is addressing. Share with us a little about what that support looks like over there in the UK.
It's good. Funny enough, it's quite funny because we have a lot of Europeans and people outside the African Caribbean community who have helped push the Black Child Agenda. And we can clearly see this is going on. What do you guys do? How do you do this if you need any support? We have that, so it has been good. And then you get some of those that's like, oh, you're playing the race card, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, whatever, nobody cares about your opinion. So we work with what works with us. We have, like you said, a lot of media coverage on a lot of the mainstream media in the UK. Even the right-wing press I've silenced, on radio interviews because they are rude. They are very obnoxious, and they're used to getting away with being right-wing, BNP style. Over here, I think you have maybe the KKK. So that type of style where they've also been shut down because I go onto those platforms, I need to, number one, know what I'm talking about. Number two, have my facts and evidence. That's all I can deal with is facts and the evidence. So the only way how you can shut down a fool is by only stating facts and evidence. So they do get shut down. Mainstream media, TV, it gives them good ratings, which is fine. And it also gives me exposure so that those that may have not heard about my organization can hear and know that they can reach out to us and they won't be isolated because not everyone lives in London, which is quite a mixed variety of nationalities and races. Some live quite far out in the countryside where they're the only darker hue for miles on end, and they face a lot of discrimination and racism and bullying and things like that. So, they're not alone.
So in these environments like London where there are lots of people, Are there teachers, education administrators, or citizens who are allied to also demand a stop to injustice? I mean, is there a way to grow the involvement such that people who might not understand it directly would have a way to lend a helping hand?
Absolutely. I'm glad that you touched on that because it is something that we have and are creating at the moment. We've just set up a couple of social media pages. Nothing's happening on them yet. But I spoke at the House of Parliament, which is obviously one of the highest houses in the UK, where all the laws are passed, all the bills, everything is set. So I've spoken at the House of Parliament a few times, and I came across quite a few people, MPs, who were like, oh, my gosh, what you're doing. So we've got a few MP support. Then I've also spoken at the National Union of Teachers, Black Teachers Network. Again, they're like, we face so much discrimination and racism within the education system themselves. When they try to support and help a young black child in particular, they're then put under a microscope and also at the risk of losing their jobs. Black teachers in the UK are running. They're running from that profession in their droves because of the treatment that they get and they see happening to our black children. So we have their support. Also within the National Health Service, the NHS, nurses, doctors, physicians, etc. Again, it's the same problem with regards to racism and discrimination. The reason why I mentioned all of these people is because and also I spoke at the Middle Temple, which is a huge barristers' chambers in front of 450 young black trainee barristers. This was just late last year. So with that, I've basically joined all of us together, and we are going to come out as one voice. And with one voice, this is going to call on some of our UK celebrities, if we can touch base with some over here as well, to actually call on what is going on in a systematic way to our African and Caribbean brothers and sisters. A lot of these celebrities are in positions where they have the platform. So please utilize your platform to support those that are coming up. Not all of our children are bad. I don't believe any child's banned. Not all of our children are, terrible. Half of them don't deserve to be in the prison system. Half of them don't deserve to be in the mental health institutions. They've been pushed there. And until we as a community, collectively, globally, start standing up and speaking out and utilizing our own media to spread that message, we're going to be having this discussion in another 20 years. For me, one of my hashtags is no long ting. No long ting. I'm from the Caribbean, and we haven't got the time to be wasting with, as we say, with the lele. We have to get on this, and we have to do it now, and we have to start speaking out, and actually empowering ourselves and each other to actually stop this systematic construct. Every system has its time. Now, this time, this is ours. This is our time to rise up again.
Aside from financial donations, do you also accept charitable donations like time from professionals who could offer, let's say, social work help or psychological training or training in regards to law? Do you offer those kinds of opportunities for people to donate their time as well?
Absolutely. We have a few junior barristers working with us at the moment who are helping support us get some cases that we're taking to the High Court. 3 young ladies, actually, who are supporting us at the moment. So we do, and sometimes during the summer holidays, we have people that always want to get their children involved, or young people that are interested in law, particularly because what we do is quite legal specific, and or just to help support sending and receiving emails, and when we put on the events, because they're quite big, big, medium-sized, 300 to 400 people, sometimes the smallest being 120. So they want to come and get involved with regards to the organisation around the event. So even our hosts at our event are young people. I always like to have a young person hosting the event, or 2 young people hosting. So we're very, very much into making sure that we're empowering young people and educating them as well.
So tell us a little about the CIC business model, and that as the business model that you chose to be independent for the Black Child Agenda, and some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome in continuing to provide these services.
Yeah, well, with the CIC, I was toying with going for charity status or the CIC. CIC is Community Interest Company, which was a model years ago, just an adapted model from years ago, that was where you can function as an organization, where you can apply for funding from local or national government, and you can also run as a business, but it's not for profit. It has to be for community benefit. Any money that comes in has to be for community benefit and work. So that's the reason why I went for that. Because number one, again, we don't have to answer to a board of trustees, but we still do have to answer to our co-directors and our secretaries, etc. We still have to follow the guidelines set out by HMRC with our accounting and finance, and also our constitution everything that you basically have in a charitable status, we also have. So the guidelines are very strict, which I'm glad for, but we still have a lot more freedom to do what we need to do because, like I said before, we're not funded. And as much as it can be a struggle sometimes because, resources, if I'm doing this full time, sometimes paperwork can take 2 or 3 days to read. They're so huge and quite complex because you're dealing with someone's life. You're dealing with a child's life, which can change from either being in an environment or not, or being in another environment where they can end up being a victim of or taking part in criminal activity. And this seems to be statistically the way it goes if they get kicked out of school. So for me, being a CIC gives me that freedom and autonomy to basically do what we need to do, how we need to do it, without having to report to the charitable council, who are quite rigid clients, which is fine. So this model works for us. We accept donations and things like that. People donate anonymously. People donate and post it on Facebook. That's brilliant. That's what we want to see. More of our people actually actively encouraging, making sure they're supporting us as a people. Less than 2% of our resources staying within our community. Someone like myself as an organization out there fighting for our children, I shouldn't have to worry about resources. That's what people say. I agree, but there's nothing I can do about it, and I can't lose sleep worrying about it either.
Let them see what they're capable of.
So if someone were trying to start an organization or organize any effort against these long-standing disparities, how would you encourage them to start? What would you lend as advice to listeners who are considering taking action, large or small, to bring it to our communities in the United States, for instance?
I would say just get started. Literally, that's what I did. I just started, and I wasn't an organization. I ran for ages before I actually formally registered as an organization. I think a good few years. Just do it. That's it. Don't procrastinate. Don't if, but, or maybe. Go and do your research. Read. See what's going on out there currently. Speak to parents, because parents are all putting, not even an ad, because I did an article. I had a double-page spread in our local Guardian newspaper, and my phone hasn't stopped ringing since, and that was in 2013 or 15. Just do it. And that's all I can really say, because if you spend too much time having meetings and planning this and planning that, you'll just spend all your time having meetings and planning this and planning that and don't actually get anything done. Just get on with it. I basically learned as on the job because I knew nothing about education law. Why would I? I wasn't trained to be an education lawyer. I knew nothing about children and families law. None of these areas were me. I was a business professional with my then husband. We ran a successful company, employed 25 staff members, and then went through that motion of deceased, shut down the company, and then found myself in this position and just literally grew it from the ground up. I didn't start with any investments. I had no one next to me. I just did what I needed to do, and that's where I am now.
Talk a little bit about confidence. I know you say a lot of the parents don't necessarily feel empowered to speak up, or sometimes feel underrepresented, or sometimes how you're saying they're in the countryside and they might be the only family that is experiencing these type of problems. Talk a little bit about building the confidence and understanding the power that we do have to have little changes, make something happen big like what you're doing.
That's the thing. I think I'm just that. I've always been a quite cantankerous soul. I've never been one to just accept what I was told. I've never been one to just, if something's wrong, it's wrong. Particularly with where our children are concerned. So I've always been that one that will speak up and say something. I was that one that was always sent out of the classroom because I answered back, because I didn't want to do history about King Henry VIII. If I wanted to do black history, then they gave us slavery. And I said, I don't want to do slavery. I want to know about other stuff. These slaves weren't born adults. So that's always been my nature and my spirit. So, someone called me Harriet Tubman the other day. She has the fighting warrior spirit of Harriet Tubman. I was like, wow. So that's just always been me. Not everyone has that personality. Some people have to build themselves up into it. Maybe this being on the front line is not for you. Maybe supporting an organization that already exists doing this work may be better suited to you. So, find where your strengths are, whatever that is, and just enhance it, work on it, establish it even more. Not everyone is a frontline person. And like me, I'm not a paperwork person. Give me paperwork to do, I'll rather go to sleep. But I will stand and I will speak and I will deliver and I will go and do what it needs to be done. I'll kick down doors. I will, have head teachers sacked if necessary because of your racism. That's me. That's what I'm about. So just pick whatever it is that you're good at. find another organization or set up an organization and just get started. Even if your organization isn't set up, you can still go and deliver. And once you're delivering, trust me, your phones won't stop ringing.
What are the next steps in your vision, and what do you imagine sustainability and growth to look like for the Black Child Agenda?
Gosh, that's a very big question because there's so many things going on. But one of the things is, like I said, we're looking to really, really establish our international aspect. We'll definitely be back out here for Savior's Day next year. And so we're going to start doing a lot more with our American cousins. We're going to also be in Africa doing some building programs with regards to our schools out there. So we've also had quite a bit of land donated to us in Zimbabwe, Sierra Leone, and Ghana. We're going to continue with our fundraising exercises. That way it's like for us, by us types of funding, not having to rely on the very people that we're fighting against to fund us. No, it doesn't work well in my mind. It doesn't fit very comfortably. And we'll just continue the work. The one thing that is, as I fly back out tomorrow back to the UK. As of Wednesday, I'm back on the grind. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I have hearings every day, and then again next week up until the end of March. So, this will continue, but in the background, we've got teams of lawyers who do some of their work pro bono on our behalf because they know we're not funded, so they do a lot of the work pro bono. So it's like, we're lucky and fortunate that we have people that are looking after the interests of the Black Child Agenda and our young people. When they see the work that we're doing, they're like, oh my gosh, we will deliver this kind of time. And, that's kind of it. We're just growing. And like I said, we're coming out with the new area of One Voice. So this way it can encapsulate all the other areas that we're finding that there's an issue and just making some noise about it. In the UK it's quite different to America, where you guys will be out on the front line. You guys can call on, say, for example, the NOI, say, for example, the Panther Party. I know there are some members still in existence. Say, for example, there's a few organizations that have been established for a very, very long time that, if need be, can be called on. In the UK, we have nothing. We don't have any big organizations out there that are organized and structured, besides the NOI probably. And then now the Black Child Agenda is trying to fill that gap. There's not much out there. Everyone's sort of working in isolation, which isn't serving too well.
So with everything that you're doing and all the ideas that you have in regards to giving this problem exposure, it seems the primary idea as you grow is to stay in tune with what the law is, to empower the parents to know that they do have a lot more rights and voice than is being allotted to them easily, and that they can stand up in numbers and fight for those rights. We also hear you saying no long ting, which is that we do not have time to waste in terms of speaking out, because this has to be stopped. The young people are definitely losing footing fast in regards to having their genius acknowledged and developed to its capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So how can people reach you? How can people who are interested in following up on this conversation or who are doing this work reach you or find out more about what you and the Black Child Agenda are doing?
They can just Google me, Cheryl Phoenix, or the Black Child Agenda. I'm on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. What's the other one called? Snapchat. Most young people handles? Use that. Yeah, so all of those at the Black Child Agenda. Everything's at the Black Child Agenda. If you just type that into Google, you'll find we're not hard to find at all. And that's why we chose that name particularly and specifically. Or myself, Cheryl Phoenix. I've got a really poor website up at the moment, but they can still contact me via that as well. We are accessible. We try to make sure we are accessible. And even if anyone from here is doing anything in Africa or the Caribbean, we're actually looking to try and do some of universities out there. So we're just looking to space this school building so we can actually start, like I said earlier, bringing our children out to experience, setting up our schools out there so our children, if we don't like it, then we change it, we fix it. Let's go here. Let's go to the Caribbean. Let's go to Dominica, Jamaica, wherever it is, and start educating our children there with love and compassion. So those are some of the things that we're actually working on and looking at as well. Just get out of the lion's mouth. There's no point being in it.
Community, this is Dr. Venita Kelly and myself, Felicia Chapelle of Talk to Me. Our guest is Cheryl Phoenix, the founder of the Black Child Agenda, an organization founded in 2013 with the goal of eliminating the school-to-prison pipeline and empowering parents with the tools and information they need to legally advocate for their school-age children. We've covered a lot in this brief amount of time. As we come to a close for this hour, is there any part of our conversation, Cheryl Phoenix, or anything you want to emphasize, or any closing comments that you want to leave listeners?
Yeah, the main thing is, what I would say is parents and young people, just read up on your rights. That is it, because forewarned is forearmed, or forearmed is forewarned, whichever way around it goes. Read up on your rights and enjoy life as well. Sometimes we get so bogged down in the negativity that is around us, we actually forget to smile. We actually forget to be polite to each other. In fact, being here, I must say, you guys are so much more polite than being in London. They're so rude. Here, people say good afternoon and good morning, so you're already on the start. But just empower oneself with the knowledge, the truth, and justice will always come. Like, you have to demand it. You have to make sure you're breaking down those barriers. We've got to stop asking nicely, because nicely hasn't worked for us at all. So we can be forceful without being violent, because we're always accused of being violent. We can be forceful without being aggressive, particularly for us women, the angry black woman. That's fine. Give me the label, but I still said what I said. And this is what the law says, so you need to do what I say. Just empower yourself so that way you can be a bit more louder. You can speak more confidently, because you know what you're speaking about, and they can't accuse you of being out of line or anything else. Please do follow on my social medias. And I'll definitely follow back. Like I said earlier, the Facebook, all of the handles, Twitter, the Black Child Agenda, or Cheryl Phoenix. And also thank you for having me on your show. Definitely. It's been brilliant. I've enjoyed it, and my break here has been amazing. Detroit's really cold, though, so next time I think I should be invited to Miami or somewhere. But it has been great. We're going to go and do some touristy bits now and try and grab some lunch and then head back to the UK tomorrow.
So glad we got to have this opportunity. Glad for myself, glad for the show, and glad for the listeners. Our guest this show has been Miss Cheryl Phoenix, the founder of the Black Child Agenda based in the United Kingdom. And this is Talk to Me. We're expanding efforts to end the school-to-prison pipeline. It's been very refreshing speaking to you, Miss Phoenix. We wish you the continued best.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Production assistance from audio engineer Mr. Stefan Lane, and remaster editing from Ms. Mary Evans.
Thank you for joining us, and remember, a lot of little steps
Do take you somewhere.
Talk to me.